afternoon and Good Friday. I am going to just see how things go here and make sure that we are all set up with our audio. But welcome to our first Great Spirit Bluff Falcon Ed Talk. We're going to talk about Falcons today. We're going to talk about I think it's just really cool to watch the Bluff and see what's going on with the river and see the peregrine falcons and all that. So I am going to watch my text messages for a little bit here, so see if somebody can text me, one of our cam operators, and let me know if we have good audio here. But I'm going to get started knowing that there's a delay here, so turn down the audio for the cam, so hopefully my voice is a little bit higher over the interstate below. That's I-90 below. So anyway, let's get started here. So welcome, Falcon fans. We're gonna take a quick peek here at what we're looking at. I'm gonna switch over to the nest box cam here, but we are looking at a beautiful peregrine falcon sitting on 4 eggs, incubating. That's the stage of the game that we're in right now, and this is kind of a time where, well, I guess there's been a little bit of excitement lately because we've had some great horned owls showing up at night, and they have been in the area, and that is one of the primary foes of the peregrine falcon, especially when the peregrine falcon are young in that stage before they fledge and after they fledge. We won't get into too much of that right now, but so anyway, we are looking at the Great Spirit Bluff Falcon nest box here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that nest box design, why it's there, and about the Great Spirit Bluff Falcons. So let's talk about where we are right now. So on our original slide here, we've got a shot of Michelle, and Michelle is one of the most amazing falcons we've seen here. We basically have seen her on camera ever since we put this project into place. The Raptor Resource Project did this, and it's kind of a neat story how things got started here. But I'm going to go back to a shot of our current falcons. This is Nova in the nest box. That's our new female Nova, and Newman. And both falcons now, male and female, are both unbanded, no bands. So that means that nobody like us, like the Raptor Resource Project, got a chance to find them and band them before they fledged and got out into the wild. So anyway, good deal. I'm getting a report that audio sounds good. So anyway, talking about a couple things today. We're going to go through basically, I think, 2 things I think that really like just as an introduction here. We'll talk about Great Spirit Bluff, what makes it special, and how this got to be a live cam and a big part of our education project with the Raptor Resource Project. Also a really important monitoring site because we've got audio and video. But so conservation success stories, I used to just love listening to Bob Anderson talk about the conservation success story of the peregrine falcon in the Midwest here, and specifically up and down the Mississippi River Valley along the bluffs, and we're in the Driftless area. Used to love to listen to him talk about that, about falconry, the whole history over the ages of peregrine falcons. But the conservation success story of the peregrine falcon, that's one thing we're going to talk about here. The other conservation story I want to talk about is land stewardship. I mean, it really is an issue. about what people do with their land, conservation of land, especially as population grows, and land use and what people do with the land that they own. We're passing these basically. We're only owners of this land for a certain period of time, and we're passing it to our future families and descendants, and we inherited it from them, right? So let's get started a little bit on this story about the conservation of the peregrine falcon. And one thing that Bob was really we used to talk about, and it was a really neat story, is just the history of monitoring birds of prey, and specifically the peregrine falcon up and down the Mississippi River and the Bluff corridor here. It's a major flyway in North America, and home of the peregrine falcon. And Bob put together a couple papers about the peregrine falcon and the similarity in structure of the effigies that Native Americans had placed, and argued that it looked more like peregrine falcons than eagles. But so peregrine falcons have been around for a long time, and the graphic that I've got put up here that I think you can see, it says P sites at the top. I think that's peregrine sites, and Bob used to talk about how neat it was that one of the most well-known conservationists, Aldo Leopold, one of his graduate students was Fran Hammerstrom, and one of Fran's graduate students was Dan Berger. And Bob knew Dan Berger. I'm going to just throw up a quick shot here of Bob with Dan. You can see that Bob really is looking like he's looking up to Dan. I think he really respected Dan, and they had a great partnership and relationship going there. But let's take a look at some of the data here. I think this is kind of neat because if you've ever been out and done research out in the field, you know that this is what field notes look like. But if you look there at the years on the side, we've got 53, 54, 55, 56, and 61. So Dan was doing surveys, I believe, across the country in different places, mostly here along the bluffs for peregrine falcons. But these early surveys of peregrine falcons before DDT came along and pretty much wiped out the population nearly entirely. This is very important information. If we look at the survey that he did here back in 53, maybe these are points, or P, whatever P stands for. P3, La Crosse County, there's a site there. 4 is Winona County. That's now what we call Homer Bluff, we believe. Crawford County, Lynxville, and then Great Spirit Bluff here, number 6, Houston County, Minnesota, 4.5 probably miles north of La Crescent. So a listing here of sites pre-DDT and some other ones down there in Wisconsin. But very neat how that research was being done, very timely. This probably would have been before issues with DDT came up, maybe right about before that, but probably I don't know that they would have known too much about the devastating effects of DDT back in 53. Maybe that was the time period where people started noticing things and it was used, but I believe that was more in the 60s. So anyway, with this research here, let's go to the story. And basically DDT came along and the peregrine falcon was extirpated from most of the continental U.S. here in the Midwest, and there are a few in eastern and western parts of the U.S., but almost entirely gone. And that was Bob's passion, peregrine falcon breeder, and gave them off for release after DDT was banned, and really was focused, and the Raptor Resource Project was started up to help bring peregrine falcons back after DDT in the Midwest area here. That's what the Raptor Resource was founded around, and that's what Bob's life mission was here. So where are we in this story? After DDT, Bob was captively breeding peregrine falcons, giving them and selling them for release. And one of the things that happened that was really of interest was that the peregrine falcons in the 90s, even after being released, and we had peregrine falcons on man-made structures, urban population, some along, other land or building structures, but they were not coming back to these historic eyries, these sites that Dan Berger and others had studied pre-DDT. So that led to the historic breeding and release of peregrine falcons down in breeding in Bluffton, and then release from Hanging Rock down at Effigy Mounds National Monument back in 1989 and 1998 and 1999. Correct that. So after that release, that historic release, we're going to talk about Great Spirit Bluff here, but along these bluff sites, just a couple of years after that, the first peregrines showed up at Maiden Rock and other cliff sites here, Queens Bluff and some of the others, Lansing, Iowa, showed up, and they were birds that Bob had released. They had bands, and so that repopulation of some of these natural cliff eyries up and down the Mississippi River corridor here had taken place. And so where does this intersect, this peregrine falcon recovery story, with Great Spirit Bluff? That intersects back in about 2011, and I'm going to show you a graphic here. That intersects with about 2011, and those crazy, I used to think it was those crazy Raptor Resource Project folks that come every year, and they do banding of peregrine falcons and hang down that bluff, grab the young peregrines, bring them up and band them and take blood samples and do things like that. Those crazy people come every year, and we have a picnic for them and celebrate the peregrine falcon being back, and the awesome success story of the peregrine falcon being back. And Bob was telling a story about the Decor Eagle Cam that went viral, and how everybody was watching it. It was such an unbelievable education opportunity to teach people about the life cycle of the bald eagle, America's national symbol. And the conversation came up of, Bob, you're a falconer. What about having a falcon cam that we could do research and do things? And long story short, the Eagle Scout project for my son Jonathan was hatched, and I'm just showing a graphic here which shows the property there. This is the contiguous property of Great Spirit Bluff, is about 80 acres of family property, and that line there shows the transect of where the Eagle Scout project, half of it was to make nest boxes, and the other half was to get a live cam going. So that is the approximate 1,000-foot path of where the conduit and the wires go to putting the first falcon nest cam up on Great Spirit Bluff. And that was back in 2011. It was installed, and then it went live in 2011 fall and 2012 with actual falcons. Just going to show you a shot of the nest box that was placed up on the bluff in 2003. So Bob approached my father, Tom Howe, about repopulating falcons on this bluff, and the reason that Bob wanted to put a nest box there was because of raccoons. Didn't know about, I believe that raccoon scat was observed, and if you look where the nest box is, you can see a darker spot and an overhang there. Right down below that is what we call the rock ledge diner. That's where falcons will prep and eat a lot of the prey that they get. But basically, raccoons were there, and the issue was successful breeding and peregrine falcon productivity here at the site. So nest box, what does that do? Benefit of the nest box basically is to provide a escape from the ability for those raccoons to get to the nest box and cause troubles for the falcons. So that was the reason for the nest box. We're looking at that shot there, and so that nest box was put up there. I'm just going to show you quick here what this project, this Eagle Scout project, turned into. You can see a board there across the top of the nest box. You can see a very small little color bullet cam, it's called. There also was a little microphone that was drilled in the side of the nest box there, and so pretty small beginnings there. Just a camera that would bring something and show people peregrine falcons in a nest box. And Bob was using these cameras up and down different sites, whether it be buildings, whether it be grain buildings. This was one that was going to be on a natural cliff peregrine falcon dwelling site. And as far as the peregrine falcons here at Great Spirit Bluff, 2015 was the first year of productivity. And it's pretty amazing over the years how many peregrine falcons have hatched here. So first year at the Bluff here, just for information, was 2005. And the total number of young produced from Great Spirit Bluff here as of last year is 44. Amy, who's been keeping track of all this stuff, in charge of our monitoring program, Amy Reese, basically says that Great Spirit Bluff remains our most productive cliff site, and that's despite the black fly issues that we've had recently. So some interesting productivity numbers there, and also, I guess, in bringing up this whole black fly issue, this live cam has really given us a great window into seeing what happens to the falcons after we go out and ban them. What do they have to deal with, and what are they being exposed to in the environment after they're banded, and after a lot of attention goes off of the peregrine falcons after that part of our monitoring project is done. So here's just a quick shot here I'm going to show you of the first cam. So this is Michelle, a younger Michelle, and this is 2012. You can see her with some of her young there, and this, I believe, is Travis. This was Travis and Michelle were both cliff-hacked or raised falcons. Michelle from Mawson's Bluff, and I'm trying to remember Travis if it was from Lynxville. I might have that wrong, but two cliff-raised peregrine falcons there. And you can see tucking the egg in there. But this was our first audio, very small microphone in the side of the nest box, and basically we didn't have infrared with this camera. And this was our first year of the Great Spirit Bluff Falcons. How much has changed over those years? This is our live cam right now, and we're seeing a shot from the cliff cam. We'll show a little bit of some views here in a little bit and take a look at some of the spots, drive the camera here for a little bit. But one of the things that's really pretty amazing about the whole thing with the peregrine falcons here at Great Spirit Bluff is the educational opportunity to show this cam, show this property to people. I talked earlier about two conservation stories, the conservation story, success story of the repopulation of the peregrine falcon to the bluffs of the Mississippi River Valley. The other is just land conservation. And so Great Spirit Bluff, a little bit of details about the conservation of that. It is a property that's been in the family since the 50s. My dad and my grandfather bought this from a hermit that lived here, and 2 primary residences are there. But basically, the Minnesota Nature Conservancy approached my father about putting this property into the registered list of natural areas for the state of Minnesota. And the neat thing about that was they asked him to name it, and Great Spirit Bluff, that name came from just my dad's respect for the American Indian and just the relationship that the Indians through the centuries have had with the land and with the animals around them and just their spirituality. So that's how it became Great Spirit Bluff. But this plaque here, basically from the Nature Conservancy, names this as a Great Spirit Bluff is a heritage site, part of Minnesota's natural heritage. It's registered as a Minnesota natural area by the Minnesota chapter of the Nature Conservancy, and that's back in 1986. One other thing too about conservation, we have had a relationship with the Minnesota Land Trust, a nonprofit, which is an amazing organization that has been helping to allow people to conserve and set the goals they have for their own property. And basically, Great Spirit Bluff and many other properties across the state of Minnesota are preserved and protected in perpetuity by conservation easement that is placed on that property. My dad, my brother, others have been very active in the area of conserving and protecting property. So this has got a perpetual easement on it. There used to be a buildable parcel right out in the end of the bluff where a house or a mansion or whatever you would want could be built, and now that is perpetually preserved for the natural beauty and basically for peregrine falcon habitat. So anyway, that's the land conservation part of this story, and that's how Great Spirit Bluff got its name. So let's move on here a little bit. I just wanted to show quick. This is I'm going to show you a trailer kind of movie that was put together by Sustainable Driftless and Untamed Science, who did the filming for this. And this is just a shot of many of the bluffs here that are part of the movie Decoding the Driftless. This should play here, and I should have both audio and video. But I'm going to put this up and just take a look at the bluffs here, the river corridor, and the peregrine falcons, and you're going to see Dave Kester. I think you'll see Jonas and some others who are part of that filming project, but it just gives you an idea of what we're looking at here. Right there, that's part of that movie, but one of the first sites where the peregrine falcons were back. Alma there. See the peregrine falcon soaring by. This is Lansing. You can see Jonas there. Checking out the nest box before we leave. So, some amazing work, the monitoring and things that goes on here with the monitoring program that Bob and the Raptor Resource Project started up, and that we continue to do to this day. We'll be getting ready and going out and doing our actual banding activities coming up here in late May, early June. So let's take a look around here. I think we've got several minutes here, but I wanted to do a quick tour and show you guys some of the sites here. One thing I think that's neat, and you'll see it here before I zoom in, I'm just going to start taking control of the camera here, but let's take a look at the bluffs. I just need to log back into the camera here. Hang on one second. So, I'm going to zoom in here and take a look at what we call, if you look to the left of the picture here, you'll see what looks like the profile of a human face, and we call it Bluffy, but this is what looks to be like a Indian profile, and how fitting with Great Spirit Bluff. But if we zoom in here, we can take a look at what looks like the head and the face. I'm going to zoom in right here. And if we center here on the face and the nose, there you can see the shadow of the eye socket, the nose there, and a chin, and the chest of the Indian down below, that lighter colored rock. So that's Bluffy. We're going to look at the nest box, and we don't have time here, but I have some video showing when we went down and we actually replaced the nest box and dropped that nest box and then scribed and put this new nest box in here. One thing you'll be able to see, and pretty amazing with these cameras, the detail that we've got. You can see right in the center there where that's either Newman or Nova sitting on the 4 eggs. You can see that we've got the rock face right there, right up against them. So this is temperature control. It's to keep this as close to possible as a natural cliff falcon eyrie. And remember we were talking about the predation with raccoons. There is a crevice there right between the dissecting part of the rock here that we climbed down that, and we've trimmed some trees and stuff out of there in the past, but what we call the Rock Ledge Diner here, there is actually raccoon access, and they can basically come down that crevice and they can crawl up into that crack and come through here. So it would be an awesome spot, you know, naturally for the falcons. They actually can see a little bit of an area there where they were scraping in the ground, a small depression there. So you actually see, you know, if the nest box was not there, it's very possible that Newman or the male falcon may have brought the female to that area with food gifts, and that might have been one of the preferred potential nesting areas. But lucky for us, so we can monitor these falcons and that they have a better chance without the raccoon predation. We've got the nest box there. All right. With these cameras, we have the ability to look up now. We can see the bluff top here. We can see perch areas. We can see other things. We do have an active bald eagle nest. We can't see it because of the treetops here, but we have an active bald eagle nest about right down in the area that I'm going to zoom into here. Pretty amazing, but the falcons allow them to be in the area, because if the falcons didn't want them there, they would be strafing these bald eagles and they would be keeping them out of the area. So it's interesting that they allow the bald eagles to nest that close. I think there is like different zones, you know, especially certain times of the year. The bald eagles are driven out of the upper zone here. This is the peregrine falcon no-fly zone, and then down below we have the bald eagles, and they will kind of hug that lower area and transport back and forth down to the river. Just going to take a look at some of the favorite spots here. You can see these cedar branches that are favorite perch spots. One of them down here. We catch some amazing shots and video of the peregrine falcons here and the young. Didn't have really time to talk about the amazing story of Carson last year and his falling and then being tended to for 16 days down below the bluff, and then coming back up. We're going to run out of time for that today, but we can talk about that some other time. I guess the other thing I wanted to show you guys is we are at flood stage right now, and if we take a look at the flood stage of the Mississippi River, I guess we're dealing with the residuals of snow melt, and you can see as we take a look here that the gates are pretty much wide open. We are at flood stage, and our sincere hope this year is that this flooding does not persist, and that we don't have high rains here, because that really is what leads to these outbreaks and infestations of black flies. So I'll leave that with one story here, that it is a pretty amazing thing that we've learned with the nest box cam here over the years. Some pretty interesting data that we've collected and that Amy's worked up. We've got some amazing data showing about a shift over the last several decades since monitoring here of when the eggs are laid and when peregrine falcons come back and eggs are laid on these primarily these Midwest peregrine falcon nesting sites, and also that what goes with that, with these high rains and the temperature changes and warming that we're getting with the climate change that has been measured, is this extra flooding and the heavy rains that we've been getting. There's a good correlation between that and the black fly production, which leads to peregrine falcons falling and bailing out of the nest early. But as we've gotten to see to our delight, I guess, in the end of the story, and that is that when the falcons do fall, the chances are that their parents are going to tend them and take care of them until they can fully mature for fledging and gaining positive flight, and then show up back onto the bluff. So then the statistics show that so out of the 8 or 9 just for example here, out of the 8 years that I'm looking at where we had falcons, young falcons fall, or 8 falcons had fallen out of 4 different year events where we had high water and black flies. 7 out of the 8 of those falcons were accounted for. So the success ratio of peregrine falcons taking care of their young is quite amazing, even when the young fall and when they're tended down below the bluff. And that is something that we had no idea of, that success ratio and the ability of those parents to do that. So, well, anyway, I will leave it at this. We will zoom back out here and place the camera on the nest box, and we are going to have a chat on the raptorresource.org website in the chat for Great Spirit Bluff. Amy just set one up for the day here today, and I will be joining chat here in a little bit. But thank you so much for joining the chat today. Wish I had more time. Tried to cover a lot here, but we will come back and we'll talk more about some of these details in some future talks. So thanks again.